We have to talk about the massive signal that has just been fired from the Aso Rock villa. A signal that changes absolutely everything regarding the fate of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and the way terrorism cases are going to be handled in this country moving forward. If you thought the life sentence handed down in November was the end of the road, or if you thought the denial of his transfer to Kuje yesterday was the final blow, you need to listen very closely to what the federal government has just released today. The headline is innocent enough on paper: FG6 speedy trial of terrorists to reduce insecurity. But when you peel back the layers and look at the timing, just 24 hours after Justice Omotosho locked Kanu down in Sokoto, it becomes crystal clear that this is not just a general policy. This is a direct, calculated directive aimed at cementing the fate of the IPOB leader and ensuring that there are no long, drawn-out appeals to save him. We are broadcasting this deep dive today, Tuesday, December 9th, 2025, and the atmosphere in the political corridors of Abuja is charged with a new kind of urgency. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, has come out swinging with a statement that essentially tells the judiciary, we are done waiting. The government is arguing that the primary reason insecurity is festering in the southeast and the northeast is because terrorism trials are taking too long, allowing suspects to become martyrs and rallying points for their followers. But let's be real with ourselves, family. Who is the biggest terrorism convict sitting in custody right now? It is Nnamdi Kanu. When the FG says they want speedy trials and speedy conclusions to these cases, they are effectively telling the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court that the era of stalling is over. They want Kanu's case wrapped up, sealed, and delivered so that the chapter can be closed permanently. This new directive is fascinating because it reframes the entire narrative of the last few weeks. Remember how Kanu's lawyers were complaining about the rush? They screamed that the trial in November was too fast, that they weren't giving enough time to prepare, and that the judgment was rushed to meet a deadline. Now the federal government is coming out to validate that speed. They are saying, yes, speed is the new strategy. By openly calling for faster judicial processes to reduce insecurity, the government is providing a political and security justification for what Kanu supporters call a miscarriage of justice. They are telling the public that keeping Kanu in court for years is a security risk, and therefore, speeding him to a final life sentence or worse is a matter of national safety. It is a brilliant, albeit terrifying masterstroke of narrative control. They are no longer denying the rush, they are owning it as a necessary tool for peace. You have to understand the pressure this puts on the appellate courts. Nnamdi Kanu's legal team, led by Aloy Ejimako, is currently scrambling to file an appeal against that life sentence verdict delivered by Justice Omotosho. Normally, an appeal like this could take years. It could sit in the docket while lawyers file motions and counter-motions. But with this speedy trial directive flying around, do you think the appellate courts are going to let this file gather dust? No, the body language from the executive is clear. Prioritize this. This means we could be looking at an appeal hearing as early as January or February 2026, a timeline that is practically unheard of in the sluggish Nigerian judicial system. This urgency is what has the pro-Biafra community in a panic. They know that a rushed appeal rarely favors the defendant. Speed usually benefits the prosecution, who just wants to uphold the status quo. And let's look at the wording, reduce insecurity. This is the key phrase. The government is linking the duration of the trial to the violence on the streets. The logic they are pushing is that as long as Kanu is on trial, his supporters have hope, and that hope fuels agitation, sit-at-homes, and attacks. By concluding the trial, meaning confirming his guilt and locking him away forever, they believe they kill the hope and by extension, kill the agitation. It is a psychological war. They want to show that the supreme leader is not coming out, so everyone should just go home. This is why they wouldn't move him to Abuja. Moving him to Abuja keeps him in the news, keeps him close to the center of power, and keeps the hope alive. Keeping him in Sokoto and rushing the legal process makes him irrelevant, out of sight, and eventually, the hope, out of mind. This development also sheds light on why Justice Omotosho was so hostile to the transfer request yesterday. If the directive from the top is speed up and lock down, then a judge granting a transfer request would be seen as going against the grain. It explains the law school insults and the dismissal of the family's pleas. The judiciary seems to be aligning perfectly with this new executive posture. It is almost as if there is a synchronized effort to strip Kanu of every procedural victory he could possibly get. The speedy trial policy is the cover under which all these harsh rulings are being made. If anyone complains, the government can simply say, "We are just trying to make the country safer by clearing the court dockets." It is a defense that is hard to argue against if you are an average Nigerian tired of kidnapping and banditry. But for Kanu, it is a noose tightening around his legal neck. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but is this legal? Can the executive tell the judiciary what to do? Technically, no. Separation of powers and all that. But we live in Nigeria. When the Attorney General speaks about seeking speedy trials, it is often read by judges as a clear indication of what the state expects. And in high-profile terrorism cases, few judges are willing to be the ones dragging their feet when the government is citing national security. This directive effectively isolates Kanu even further. It paints him not as a political prisoner or a freedom fighter, but as a clog in the wheel of national security that needs to be removed quickly. It lumps him in with bandits and Boko Haram insurgents, stripping away the political nuance of his agitation. By categorizing them all as terrorists who need speedy trials, the government dissolves the specific grievances of the Southeast into a general pot of criminality that must be crossed. This is where the wickedness we talked about earlier gets institutionalized. It is no longer just one judge having a personal problem. It is the entire state machinery pivoting to a fast-track mode specifically to bury this case. Imagine being Kanu's lawyer right now. You are fighting a life sentence, your client is 700 kilometers away, the judge hates your applications, and now the federal government is publicly campaigning for the courts to hurry up. It's like trying to run a race with weights on your ankles while the referee is shouting at you to run faster. The odds are stacked so high that they are practically touching the ceiling. Before we go deeper into the reactions from the Southeast, I want to take a quick second to ask you to please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm push this video to more people who need to understand the game being played. The mainstream media might just read the headline, but here we connect the dots. So give us a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, join the family. We are tracking this story all the way to 2026. Now, let's look at the reaction from the streets. The news of this speedy trial directive has not gone down well in the Southeast. Already, there are rumblings of new protests. The feeling is that the government is preparing to murder justice in broad daylight. People are asking, why was there no speedy trial for the politicians who stole billions? Why is there no speedy trial for the bandits kidnapping people in Kaduna? The selectivity of this speed is what angers people. It feels targeted. It feels like the speed is reserved only for those who challenge the status quo, while the process is reserved for those who are part of the elite. This perception of bias is dangerous because it reinforces the very narrative Kanu preached, that the system is rigged against his people. By rushing to convict him, the state might be inadvertently proving his point. And we have to look at the international angle. Kanu has dual citizenship. The British government has been largely quiet, much to the frustration of his family. But with this new move to rush the finality of the case, will the UK speak up? Speedy trial in international law is a human right, meant to prevent people from rotting in jail without conviction. But here, the term is being weaponized. It is being used not to free the innocent quickly, but to condemn the accused permanently. It is a twisting of legal principles that could set a very dangerous precedent. If the government can decide to speed up a case whenever it feels threatened, what happens to the right to a fair hearing? Fair hearing requires time to gather evidence, time to interview witnesses, time to prepare arguments. Speed is the enemy of thoroughness. By prioritizing speed, the government is essentially saying they don't care about thoroughness. They just want a result. The timing also coincides with the lead-up to the 2027 election cycle, even though we are still in 2025. The government wants to clear the deck. They don't want the Nnamdi Kanu case hanging over the next election. They want it dead and buried in 2025, so that by 2026, the noise would have died down. This speedy trial directive is likely the beginning of the mop-up phase of the current administration's security strategy. They want to go into the second half of their tenure claiming they have solved the IPOB issue. And for them, solving it means Kanu in jail, key thrown away, and the courts moving on to other things. But can they really kill the ideology with a court ruling? That is the million-dollar question. History tells us that rushing the martyrdom of a leader often backfires. If Kanu is seen as a victim of a kangaroo-ized speedy process, his myth will only grow. He will become the man the Nigerian state was too afraid to try fairly. The speedy trial might reduce insecurity on paper by locking him up,
But on the streets, it might brew a new kind of anger, a silent, resentful anger that is harder to police than open agitation. The AGF statement also mentioned collaboration with the judiciary. This word collaboration is scary in a democracy. The executive and judiciary are supposed to be independent, not collaborators. When they collaborate on the speed of trials, the accused person stands no chance. It implies a handshake deal behind closed doors. We give you the resources, you give us the convictions. For Kanu's defense team, this is the nightmare scenario. They are not just fighting the evidence, they are fighting a united front of the state and the bench. So, as we wrap this up, the message from Abuja is loud and clear. The clock is ticking, and it is ticking fast. Nnamdi Kanu is not just fighting a life sentence, he is fighting a deadline set by the federal government. The directive for speedy trials is the final nail in the strategy to put him away before anyone can catch their breath. The question is,